right, then we'll call the regular meeting to order. Phones off. Yep. Double check. Go to public comment, non-agenda items, questions, comments, anything from online? Okay. Conflict of interest declaration, sir, Peter? None. 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 Great. Very good. So we'll go right into the public hearing. District budget.
Okay.
Terry.
I'll start with the budget, then I'll move on to the rates. But first, I'd like to make a comment about our timing of this project. We started this project in 2018 under the leadership of Pat Cronin. We continued with the leadership of Director Reeves, and now under Brian Wheeler. And all throughout, when we started the project, we were looking for the comments from our engineers was it was going to cost us approximately 20 million, maybe a little more. And the costs continued to escalate throughout, but our board did not hesitate to continue because it was something we had to do. Had they slowed down or put a halt on based on the costs, we'd probably be facing twice as much in costs today as we would have been. One of our engineers sent around an article from the Vale area that some of the water systems in Eagle County didn't proceed with projects, and their costs are more than double that. And so we have to give our board and for the last 5 years, hurrah for doing what they did, staying on task and forging ahead, because things would look a little different today if we had not. So thank you.
Scott Bukes in that, right?
Yeah.
The guy.
For our budget, would you pull up the highlights? We'll start with some of the highlights here. The capital budget for the sewer side, we're looking at approximately 6.4 million with about 5 items that are listed. The big nut is the project. We have about 6 million left on that project. The funding is in place to take care of that. On the water side, we're looking at about 415,000 in a variety of capital items. And again, the water side has the reserves to take care of that. Operating revenues are based on the 5% rate increase that we'll be talking about shortly. My analysis shows we'll have about a 6% increase in revenues that, of course, will not be sufficient for where we're at today, but we have a rate analysis starting July 1st that will put in place the rate increases that will get us to operational funding. And I'll talk about a couple of, the expensive items like health insurance. We were initially looking at a 10% increase. It looks like it's going to be a 7% increase. We've added some plans that have lessened the costs for both the participants and the district. We've added an option for vision, and in the past, we've had a dental plan that's been self-funded and self-administrated. We're going to hire an outside dental firm to take care of that, or a dental insurance company to take care of that. And that will ease the burden on our administrative staff. Across the budget, we're looking at inflation of about 4 to 8%, depending upon the particular items that we were looking at. Some a little less, some a little more. Overall, I think 4 to 8% was a fair inflation rate to put in place here. We have one outstanding bond that we pay off every year, and the mill rates on that are based on the payments, and the estimated mill rate for that will be 4.78. Plant investment fees are based on what we expect for construction. We've got some big projects coming in, so plant investment fees were raised for this year. And then if you could go to the summary. One more.
Hide the bar here.
Yeah, and this kind of run through and give you a general idea where the expenses are falling. Like I said, our revenues are going to be up approximately 6%. That's based on the 5% rate increases proposed to the board for today. General admin of 1.68. Sewer operations, this is where the expenses have really increased dramatically. We've got power, chemicals, and engineering for this next year have all double-digit increases. And the largest nut in that is the depreciation expense on the new plant. $60 million plant is gonna raise our operating costs tremendously. There's about 1.7 million in depreciation expense just on the sewer side. And so over the next 3 years, the rates are going to have to be raised to meet those operating expenses. On the water side, not quite as dramatic an increase, but again, we've had to staff up to cover this new plant that we've built, and the expansion of our water department as well. So within the water operating expenses, the main items are the repairs and maintenance, some leak detection work that we're going to perform that's going to help ensure that we have more water available. And again, engineering and water rights in the water operating budget is what threw that up just over 17%. So total operating expenses across the board are up approximately 27%. The next item is that total depreciation, showing we went from 1.2 in depreciation to 2.2, approximately 86% increase. On an operating basis, this past fiscal year, we estimated an operating loss of 1.2. We're coming in much less than that this year. But next year, the operating loss of 2.5, I believe is going to be a little bit closer to where we fall in. On the non-operating revenues, we're right on 5.6%. We received some funding through resort tax this past year, in addition to the funding that we get for the new plant that increased that slightly. The operating expenses are on target 100%. Net non-operating revenue up 9%, and then net income across the board $1,080,000. So on a total operating or a total basis, we're not in too bad a shape, but it's the net operating revenue that we've got to get to where we need to, so that we're back in black. And again, I mentioned at our last board meeting, we were in the same position 20 years ago when we bought or built the first plant. This plant is a little larger, requires more staffing. So we're a little further behind right now, but we're not as far behind as some of the smaller systems in the West, down in Colorado, that have not taken the steps to get their plants built sooner rather than later. So Any questions on the budget?
Yeah, the payroll, like a lot of the payroll items are under considerably this year. That might be related to the timing of bringing new team members on
Exactly.
board. I'm not totally sure, but is
Yeah.
it gonna play out? We're still one short. Is that accurate?
Yes, we've got one additional FTE in this budget. That's not on staff. But last year's budget, the staffing didn't come in place until later in the fiscal year. So that's why when I mentioned this fiscal year, those numbers are probably gonna be a lot closer because we're fully staffed now.
But when I look at the last month as an example, this is year to date, isn't it? So it's not last month, but it'll be interesting to see what last month does, for the overall payroll, we're still tracking under with the full team right now at the moment. What does that look like for the whole fiscal year? Then the last question is kind of related to Ron and his retirement. Is that factored into this payroll as well?
Ron's salary is in this
For the
entire year. I believe that Johnny's got plans to put someone in place once Ron retires, but not in that position.
No, it would be to backfill Terry in preparation for Terry's retirement. We'll probably open it up roughly this time next year to start that so we can transition with Terry's retirement at the end of next year.
So the transition payroll,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
transition that should have a net effect, I'm assuming is a reduction after the calendar year. Is that pretty good?
Slightly. We're not, the positions, I'm gonna be on staff the entire fiscal year. And we're gonna be having someone come in, there'll be a 2-month gap, maybe a 3-month gap between Ron's retirement and when we pull someone else in, so.
So it will be like a lot this last year.
This last year, yeah.
And so that it just feels like we're gonna have a hard time getting to the numbers that are projected in here too. So it feels like there could be potentially, but maybe not. You're saying probably not.
Probably not. And then the wild card too, again, is with the new plant, the power, the chemicals, and how that plays out.
Well, I understand that part. It does focus more on payroll. It
Yeah.
feels like the other pieces related to the new plan are unknowns. I understand kind of why we budgeted the way we did. It makes sense. Just until we understand kind of how that does function for a full calendar year, but the payroll's what I focused on. There's also a lot of other kind of like unique line items in there where the actuals for this year are higher than we budgeted for next year. And I'm sure you guys spent all kinds of time trying to figure that out, but it feels like we've already spent X this year. We're budgeting, in some cases 20-30% less for the next fiscal year. What's the basis behind that?
There are a few line items that, with respect to like the filter building here, that we don't expect to be spending as much. The irrigation system, we don't plan on spending as much as we did in the past. Is there another example that?
No, I didn't really highlight any of them, Jerry. I just noticed like 4 or 5.
Yeah,
different
well,
lines.
the electric, I think in a couple of them were the electric power costs. And so that's a variable cost, so we don't exactly know where we're gonna land, but, RSCI was using our electric for the batch plant and for the treatment plant early on, and they were using a lot of power. So it kind of distorted what we spent. They've reimbursed us for those, and we're going to receive credit on our pay requests from them. So there are little numbers that, or a few numbers that look distorted based on to date and what we expect next year. And we don't really know on some of those power costs until the plant starts running and we go through the cycle on it.
Okay. Do we need to consider like more than a 5% increase? Rate increase?
Oh, yes, yeah, this, the fact, well, I'll get, when we talk about the rate.
No problem.
Yeah.
We get ahead.
Yeah,
Apologize for that.
yeah, that's okay, no problem.
To confirm, Terry, this budget only
considers the 5%. Not what we.
The revenue line, yes, yes.
I knew that answer. I just wanted to make sure it was on.
You just want to make sure everybody else knew.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al. That's right. No. Okay.
Yeah, right, yeah, 6% based on the 5% increase and my internal analysis on what the revenues would be based on that.
Right, because there's two ways to grow our revenues, right? We can increase the rates or we get more customers.
Right, well, I
Usage.
we'll get there. Okay.
What else? Any other
On the
questions?
budget, any other questions on the budget? I don't see anyone here that came for just the budget or the rates. It seems like we've got the usual suspects here, so I don't know if anyone online is here specifically for the rates or the budget.
No, this is important though. This is,
Oh, it is, yeah.
this is the most important meeting of the year sometimes, especially when you
Yeah.
get into, Mike had a great point. Is this just 5%? Oh, no. And
No, this is.
we talked about it.
Yeah,
Ratepayer outreach or community outreach is going to be so important with this move forward. Since you're just kind of at that checkpoint in the budget, just keep something in mind with this, balancing a capital project of this magnitude, along with the O&M that goes along with, the expenses year to year that have been increasing. Then you look at, call it human resource, whatever, team building. We're in arrears on the team building. The consultants that came in talked about that and said, I don't know how you guys are getting by. Like you and I were a little more involved in that to hear it and then just saying, you guys really have a deficiency in your team. And it was a compliment to getting everything done with this team in the past, but now we're building. So you have all these items on the expense side. And then of course, you have the revenue side. And you had a very good opening about the past presidents, so on the boards, but of course, it's everyone that's been involved with this team all the way back in the 90s. Packy went back to the 90s. But when Packy started, he just came off 3 moratoriums. And you have to remember about what's going on here. That he had the 3 moratoriums at a pretty stable pace, but he had a lot in arrears when he started. The last 5 years, the voracious appetite for growth has just been unprecedented, big sky. I just want to kind of remind everybody this can be a little bit of a shocker, but the road is now planned for the future. Number one, think about this. There hasn't been a disruption in service since the mid 90s, 95, 96. That's pretty impressive with the type of growth. I mean, communities push pause. You read about moratoriums all the time, but you haven't had that here. And I'll give the credit to the board and the team saying, how did everybody get through that period, especially over the last 5 years during the increase in expenses across, inflation, but that demand constantly, that beating drum. At the same time, number one priority, it's not an open checkbook for all these expenses. Al in particular, he watches every dollar on some of these things because we talk about them after the meeting, but other different things, just like we're doing today. But the number one priority is that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the ratepayers. Every decision should start with, okay, is this in the best interest of the ratepayers, the community, or the program? That's it. So I just want to kind of cap that off. It's been great. The numbers are a little staggering.
Yes.
I don't ever remember it being 20 million for that plan upgrade, but hey,
No, dude, I went through, yesterday, I went through the meeting minutes from 2018 and Scott Bucher mentioned $20 million. And I was surprised to remember or see that and remembered it. But they slowly went from 20 to 29 to 30. And we ended up with a contract, signed a contract in April of 2021 for 42 million.
Yeah.
So. And now there were a number of changes, nothing major, but nothing that was a surprise to us. Things that we added that we wanted to add. That contract is at 50 million now. And so, had we not done it then, and we'd be looking at 100 million or more to do what we've done.
Hey, and I never doubt your accuracy.
Yeah.
I doubt my memory. Here's the deal on it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said this. This is the important part. It wasn't as if we just couldn't control it. We did our best and sorry, went these are all alternatives that we went through along the way. That said, do we really want to, if we can, I remember saying we could create phase 2 and phase 3 for 5 million. Well, now it's about 15 million. But these alternates that we kept choosing, we said, wait a minute, why would we have to come back and demo these walls for the plant and do this and that? Let's make the right decision now. So these are all investments in the future.
Yes.
Not expense overruns. These were chosen alternate.
That will, in the long run, save us money, save. the
And there
district
it has.
money. Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is really, I think, you know, if I'm online and I'm looking at this going, wow, my rate's gonna do this, whatever the year
Well,
after.
yeah, and then there's another thing that needs to be said too, with respect to the old plant and the new plant. The old plant was funded through general obligation bonds, and those were put on the tax roll. Those are now,
Yep.
at least the sewer side, are off the tax roll. The new plant is funded through revenue bonds, which have to go through the rates. And so that's the change that you're gonna see. If our rate base and our customers would look at their tax bills from the last 10 years and see where they are now with respect to the two line items, the numbers 307 and 306, 307 being the sewer bond, and then 306 is the water bond. The water bond's gonna be off the tax roll in 2027. The sewer bonds are off the tax roll in 23, 24. And so we're shifting how we're funding this to your user rates. And so don't be alarmed, but they are going to go up.
And Terry, it's a great point because it's kind of a shame as we had these drop off the tax rolls, that their tax bills are going up. So I'm sure they're not saying, wow, my tax bill doubled, but boy, my sewer bill went down. No, they didn't do that. So again, this is all about education and community outreach. It's not that we're having a parade for it, but it's a lot's been accomplished, and this is an important checkpoint as the new plan comes online.
Any more questions? Then we'll move on to the rates. And the rate changes that we're proposing to the board today are only user rates. There's no changes to plant investment fees or connection fees. It's all user rates. So if you scroll down. Here we go, 24, 25. So the sewer rates, again, 5% increase. That means the base rate is going up from 107.34 to 112.71.
You doctor?
Hmm?
Making coffee while you sit?
Sure, I'll have some coffee.
Vince.
Yeah.
Slip through there, huh?
At 165.
Yeah. The variable rate on the sewer is going to 9.96 for commercial, 9.16 for residential. And the base rates are across the board, so we have the same rates, or same base rates for commercial as residential. On the water side, the base rate quarterly charge will go from $66.87 to $70.20, which is a $3.33 per quarter increase. And then the user rates, tier 1 goes from 378 to 397, tier 2, 566 to 594, tier 3, 794 to 834, and tier 4, 1111 to 1167. And so, and then the vacant lot charge is going from $28.53 per quarter to $29.97, a $1.44 increase. And then the one that I have to comment on is the reuse rate going from $1 to $1.05. And if the board wants to change that particular rate increase, I'd be happy to run the numbers on that for you, but that's the number, or the reuse rate is something we're going to be working on. and needs to increase from $1.05 to something else. And that will probably happen at our next rate hearing.
Such a limited number that would apply to, I think the best thing you can share with everyone is that rate versus potable.
Oh, yeah. Well, just go up to the irrigation rate. Yeah, the irrigation rates.
Which goes into
Yeah.
the tier because it's at a higher rate when you get into the irrigation season. But that's a heck of a savings if you can get into the reuse plan.
Yeah, but the reuse plan, the water is actually far more expensive than the potable water right now. So we have to reconcile that at some point, and the board will need to consider that in the future.
But it does serve a dual purpose for disposal. It's just that
Yeah,
is getting out
Yeah.
of balance now. The disposal becomes an
right.
asset versus a liability.
Yeah, and and since we started using reused water for irrigation in a number of the facilities or condominium associations around, the revenue on the water side has gone down. So we do need that revenue. And so the water is very expensive to produce, and so we should charge accordingly.
Will that be addressed in the rate study?
Yeah. We'll have Ryan with A2S look into that as well. Because there are other communities that do use reuse water that charge far more than the $1.05 per 1,000 gallons. So
What's the timeline for the rate study?
we,
July to September.
yeah, and again, this is just the first of many to come. We've discussed internally about, once we get the rate study in September, going back and having a rate change July 1st, 2025.
First one will be in January.
Did I say July? I meant January 1st, 2025, and then another July 1st of 2025. to catch up.
We can't do anything until then,
Well,
so the rate study takes place, or is that?
We talked about it. October would be a scramble with the notifications and so on. Said the same thing, that well, start just a little too tight. If it could though,
yeah.
if you could put it together.
And I mean, the district is growing, we're adding more customers just about every day. So how this is gonna play out over a 3-year period and the analysis A2S is gonna do for us may soften what we think right now is needed, and we may be able to not be as, throwing a rate shock as hard as what appears to be the case right now.
Sure.
And once we have that information, we can bring it to our ratepayers, because when we do a rate increase higher than 5%, we have to do a mail out notice to all the ratepayers, and then do another hearing such as this, and go through all the numbers.
If we are able to get 30 days in there by the end of the rate study and a board meeting, then we can get it in sooner. But it's no later than December to go into effect for January.
This is substantial.
October,
bit,
it'll
though.
take.
Yeah.
Saying, the faster that comes in, of course,
For sure.
it could be 30% or 50% more depending if you have a delay.
Well, there's communities in Colorado that are looking at 40, 50, 60% increases, 100% increases. So we're not alone where we sit financially across the industry that we're in right now. Things have changed. Costs have just exploded, and the ratepayer is going to bear the cost, and we're not alone.
Okay.
Any questions on the rates? Any additional questions on the rates?
Anyone have any suggestions from the board? Thoughts?
I think we're on the right path. I think we're recognizing the urgency, but we want the data to support the decisions we make. And I think otherwise we're just in the dark and guessing at a number where if we give it the time to do the rate study correctly, now we have a plan to get to where we need to get.
The investment in these consultants, I just want everybody understand the amount of money that's been put in and the time that this board's put into consultants, national consultants, and whether it's from the hiring, the rate, structure and things like that, is really bearing fruit now. It's just be that much more comfortable and you can recognize the value to some of the things we have in place moving forward.
Do we need to look at PIC charges? I mean, the plan went.
Yes, we will.
We will be, we're looking at all that stuff, through this rate study, and you'll see it in the next budget cycle's actual development of the CIP and the maintenance and repair. So those projects will actually be pulled out of the budget and you'll see 10-year CIP, so we'll know projects coming down and as they come in, so the process is only going to improve, and then we're going to continue. You do rate studies and evaluations every 3. If you're good, then you make the change at 5. So we'll start being in that cycle of making sure we're ahead of the curve and staying, keeping pace with stuff as we go. So this one is that change where you're starting to see we're taking care of now, but also looking at the future, and we'll make those changes.
Yeah, quote Brian's, estimate on the expansion, 15 million. What do we have to do to get to the finish line on that? I think so. It's gonna be interesting to see when that comes together, if it's 30 or not.
I remember it was 5, but I remember we're all sitting here going, man, we just don't have the 5 today. And then,
Well, and you'll see.
Mike, what were we thinking? Because you were around when we knew it was 5.
You'll see that in the CIP, and Nate's has been throwing out 2027. Well, that's only a couple of years under you. So, you start looking at that. I threw out numbers between 10 and 12 last night. But yeah, I mean, I said today's dollars, I don't know what the future dollar is going to be, but it's, we'll set ourselves up so we know what's actually coming and starting to forecast month forward and plan. So by the time it gets here, we should be in pretty good shape.
Okay. Anything else? Really nice job, Terry. Just one more time, open it up. Anyone online that wants to ask a question, has a comment? Okay, close the public hearing then. And we can go right into the consent agenda. Terry, I always open up with you on the consent agenda before we entertain a motion.
I have nothing to add right
Yeah,
now.
stage.
Yeah.
Again,
There were no surprises in expenses last month, and I'll add that we did meet with the contractor last week, and as far as last week, there's no surprises going forward, so
great.
we should be sitting good.
Great job with the financial side of things, you guys. All right, and I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Make a motion.
Second. Any additional discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I don't believe we have either Schrock or Dick on, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Let's get right into the committee reports.
The sewer district, Canyon has actually a business presentation down below. So
Okay, we'll hit that in that. Flatiron, really not. If you have any comments, we have Chris here. Michael, anything from you? We're still, let's face it, we're still waiting on some legal confirmation, some other things coming down the pipe. There is progress on it. It's not as if it's just being kicked at the board level or the committee level. We're waiting on some serious confirmation and discussion. Spanish Peak's in the same thing. Give John Olson the opportunity if he has anything to add, anything he'd like the board to consider.
No, I got nothing right now, Brian. Just working with Johnny to try to get back on the agenda to talk about the annexation. So
Good.
as of right now, we're anticipating being on the agenda next month.
All right, thanks, John.
Yep, thank you.
We should be getting our phosphate flyer, and it should be going out in this next billing cycle, and then we'll get that posted online and have it. And so that will be complete.
Okay. Policy and benefits. You did have a meeting.
has some new business on the benefits that she'll be presenting
Okay,
here in a moment.
anything else to share there?
Nope.
All right. And then the CIP Development Committee.
We have not met yet.
All
We
right,
go back to the policy and benefits. We did meet. We do have the summary changes. We do have the policies all cleaned up, and we will be talking to all the staff this week, so it'll be on the agenda for next month.
all right. Jump into business action items, and Johnny, I'll let you take on some of that.
Yes, so we are looking for District Resolution 2401, for the water and sewer rates to go into effect for 7/1/2024. Okay, for 5%.
All right. I'll entertain a motion. We can go into discussion after that, but I think we've covered it pretty well. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve District Resolution 24-01.
I'll second. Okay, second by Mike Wilsinski. I think we covered this start to finish. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Great. Good to get that one in the rear view.
Then the next action item is to approve the 2024-2025 budget.
Great. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2024-2025 budget.
Okay, second. Okay, second. Mike Wilsinski made some motion, Al Malinowski second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, unanimous. Think fast. You need me on the Zoom meeting this morning. We're a little late to the party, but you know, Dick's. We miss you, Dick. I'll let him know. All right.
So the next one,
Yeah,
we
any
have
others?
not done, we did a release in November. I only asked for 100 at the time because we were anticipating very few permits, and we were also waiting for the liquid phase to get started up. That has been completed, so we now are running on the new facility, and Amy has been receiving permits. So we are asking for another 400 SFEs to be released through District Resolution 2402. The last time we released this high of a number was 300, and those 300 SFEs lasted almost 2 years through the permitting cycle. So, but we will be giving updates for the capacity of the new facilities and what we're actually going to be proposing to DEQ as a new deviation flow, and Scott will cover all that in whole business. So we're sitting in pretty good shape. Actually, I feel we're sitting in a little bit better shape than what we thought once we got all of our obligations and stuff put together. So
Any heavy hitters coming down the pipeline?
nothing out of the ordinary that we weren't already anticipating.
Okay. All right, no surprises.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is releasing the 400 now impact anything with the data we're gonna, the DEQ process?
No, we still had 600, I think, SFEs from the old, so it's not even touching the new stuff yet.
What's sitting on the sidelines? Got to be some things sitting on the sidelines, of course, the entry corridor, anything that just hasn't permitted, let's say, yet, or hooked in yet, anything that's gonna take that down to 200 or something.
And I can answer that a little bit. I mean, you know, we obviously have the review project coming online, the new power light building, Yellowtail. This year is gonna have 3 condominiums put in, so that'll be a slight increase. Then you have the Wilson Annex and Boutique Hotel coming online. They call them all the around 250 SFEs,
Actually, a little less,
a little less.
yeah, about 150 to 200, because I have 2 of those permits on.
Perfect.
So, and I know I've asked this before, but can someone remind me why we do it this way, because you just explained, we have 600 before we're at the old capacity, but then the board releases SFEs in these little chunks.
That is actually a very good question that I have asked myself too, because you have it in there that it has to come to the board if it's over 25, which I feel is, more than sufficient. We now know what our number is, And we should be able to permit to that number without having a constant release, but this has been
I know it's
practice for a while, but
I know I asked it before, I don't remember the answer.
I'm okay with it changing. I'm sure
The
Andy.
assumption was always that in case you had, let's just say a flat tire along the way, you had a failure, you had something, and you had all 600 out there and you would release 200, but you had that somehow that's people would be planning out, pulling their permits, doing everything to get to that point. By the way, you can eat up 400 in one hotel. That's why I always ask it. So all of a sudden you've said yes to 600 SFEs. And when you're at the 300 mark, you have a failure of some type in the system. Then you'd have to kind of go back and withdraw. Right now, I think it's been a projection. Yeah. Then you get into why not release 1,000 at a time? But who knows? I think it was more about failure. So.
But what we're really releasing them to say that that staff can approve them as long as they're under 25, they're more than 25, they have to back this anyway.
And let's face it, you could stop it at any point if you had that situation, but it was always just to kind of keep it from getting away from you.
And we can probably answer that a little bit more when we present our data and stuff, because the board has asked, you know, what do we have, where we're going, and what's the future look like? So it's actually really easy now that we know all those numbers and all that stuff. So I believe it's sometime in the very near future, the actual release of SFEs wouldn't need to happen, you know, those numbers, and we would be tracking them and reporting them every month. You know.
But it's amazing how all of a sudden there'll be 150 left when those come off the sidelines. So we'll probably be right back to it. In other words, yeah.
So
It should say you had
controls our growth.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna have the 250 out there, all of a sudden those are gonna be gone. So, all right.
I'll make a motion to approve the release of the 400 SFEs.
Second. Okay, Peter. Additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Get someone on there?
So we do have David here for the housing trust, their first permits coming in. And I know David wants to speak to some of the fees and stuff, but we had Riverview. They came in, we had to go back and forth a little bit. Some square footage was a little wrong, but they're now at 25.63. And because it is 0.6 over the 25, it will need approval by the board. But I want to give David an opportunity to speak before you guys approve the budget or the permit yesterday. Yeah.
Totally use the word.
I thought we were gonna do John.
Yeah. I think
Well,
so.
you're planting the seed now.
Just-
Actually.
This is for Riverview Building 100 and 200, those two buildings, that's what's over 0.63. So that's what we're discussing today. We need your approval to move forward with that permit.
Could I just get a little quick clarification on the table here? Totals 26.99.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the old number.
Okay.
That was, we got the wrong square footage. So we got,
We got adjusted plans on Friday and we recalculated and they are at 25.63 and we're all in agreement.
Couldn't get that 0.6 down.
Almost.
Would have saved you a trip over and a couple.
I know. Oh, wow. So as Amy said, the numbers on the approval speak for itself. We're planning at this time to come back in July and see if we can work out some flexibility on how those get paid. Because the nature of the project being in a fairly complicated federal grant and the financing behind it is fairly complicated. What we're trying to avoid having to do is rewrite the loan at the 11th hour. And so we hope that you'll consider, and we worked out with Johnny and Amy yesterday, kind of 3 options, and we're working out our own math to decide which we'll ask for if necessary. Really 4 options. Our first and favorite option is some additional grant funds that will allow us to pay the permits in full at 2024 rates, and away we go.
Absent that, we're hoping that the board would consider either 15-year amortization with 50% payment up front at 2024 rates, a 10-year amortization with 100% payment up front at 2021 rates. I'm understanding
Yeah,
that correctly.
Pre-2022. Yeah.
Pre-2022, or 100% payment at 2022 rates. Pre-2022 rates. So we're not asking for that yet today because our grant status is yet unknown. That's our favorite option, obviously, is if we can secure some additional grant funding through the Montana Emergency Rental Assistance Act. We've been funded partially from that already, and so we hope that that will be able to be expanded. We'll know that within a couple of weeks. So I may be back in July to ask your consideration for just being able to pay these rates without having to refigure financing right at the end. We're shooting for occupancy August 1st at the latest. We're kind of waiting on flat work at this point, or hardscapes rather. And we're hoping to be applying for a certificate of occupancy in early to mid-July. So there's usually a 3-week turnaround on that, which gets us to that August 1st date. So we're about halfway approved on tenants. It's kind of a long, onerous process because of the nature of the grant that supplies the program. It's a 60% average income limit. And then that is verified both by the property management company, Blue Line, and then by a third party as well, according to federal rules. So it takes a little bit to get approved, but the 1 bedrooms disappeared right away. The 2 bedrooms pretty quick. The 3 bedrooms are a little bit tougher because, and we have a variety of income levels between 50 and 70, and it's the 50% income levels that I think we have 3 left. They're just tough to find somebody that, a household that large with an income that low that can still subsist in Big Sky in any way. So, but other than that, we anticipate the building to be completely full by opening, and we're very optimistic that we'll even fill those 3. They're just taking a little bit longer.
Well done. Great. For history, this has been done twice before in the district, one with Big Sky Apartments and the other one with the chapel.
As far as the payment plan.
As far as
What's the difference between the 2022 rate and the 2024 rate? Sounds like you have a gap there because of a rate change. Is that why the request?
Yeah, we, it's on us for not going back and keeping up with those rate updates. So we've sort of done our pro formas based on those older rates. I think it's about 25% between the 2 increases.
I don't know the answer to that question.
I just didn't know if you knew it offhand.
No.
So it could be a 25% bump from the original, which was around 225, 200.
Right.
220.
Yeah.
Right.
Understood.
And anything, by the way, that we would ask for payment would be accompanying with a bond or some guaranteed setup so that we close that risk to the district.
Just wanted to get you to the table for an update. Stay here. Right, that's good news. People moving in.
Yeah, we're excited. And the one thing I will say, we got a chance to tour. We haven't opened to the public yet because we're still in construction zone, but you stand in some of those units and look out over the river and then Lone Peak off to your right. I felt pretty proud that that's workforce housing. Those were some $1 million views for sure.
Well, great. All right, so we have to now consider as an action item, the approval of 25.6 SFEs, correct, sir? That's the one I kind of wonder sometimes, 25.6.
Yeah.
What's that?
0.63.
0.63, all right. How about a motion on 25.63?
I'll make a motion to approve the release of the 25.63 SFEs for review projects 100 and 200.
Second.
I'll second.
All right. Any other questions, David?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. We're approving the SFEs today as if it's just a regular project.
Yes.
And then we'll revisit the payment
If
issue
necessary.
at a future time if necessary.
And to clarify, this is from the housing trust 500 SFE pool.
600.
Or 600.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And where are we at on that now?
We are going to be reconciling that now that we've got all that stuff coming in and some other projects have been allocated some SFPs. So
Ballpark though, we haven't.
400-ish.
We have them.
yeah, we have. Yeah, we have.
400-ish after this.
Yeah, we'll be left.
Yeah, we left.
Yeah.
Last month, you gave us a little table that shared where they were going and where they've been. I remember
We have that table, it's the points.
Yeah.
0.9,
Just
0.6.
to let you know, it was in our board packet last month.
Yeah.
And we'll have that, done today,
Yeah. Okay.
to be exact.
Have a motion, have a second, any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? I've been 9 o'clock, well, great, thanks for coming by, we'll see you next month.
You bet. Next permit that is on the agenda is a Wilson Annex, SFE approval of 27.68.
Okay.
Nick's not here, but I mean, we went through the numbers 3 times and he and I are in agreement. Little Mountain Land Company approved this number. They were at 25, but we went back and they approved the 27.68.
That's the important part. You give it the thumbs up.
I mean, you're all over these already.
This is great.
It's awesome.
We're liking this. 9 o'clock, all right, next up. Motion. Have to, it's an action item.
Motion to approve the 27.3. So it was
27.68.
0.68.
Okay, Mike Wilsinski made the motion, second.
I'll second.
Okay, Al second. Discussion,
Where is this?
Wilson.
Here in.
It's in Town Center.
No,
Yeah.
It's just adjacent.
Right,
It
that's
is.
right.
It's
If
right.
you look at the Wilson, it's right to the left of the Wilson and the little lot right next door between.
And between that and that, new Franklin.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And then the boutique hotel will be right across the street.
That's something separate.
Yeah, it's something.
That's
Will that
coming.
call the Wilson something too?
No.
It's gonna be called
Boutique. Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, unanimous.
Oh, I was, just one clarification, as I was reviewing that application. I think I know this answer, but I'm just gonna say it out loud. Because they're in town center, they don't pay sewer
Correct.
charges.
Yes.
What the difference between a similar application with somewhat similar SFEs versus.
Right. So Town Center and West Fork are both under that Supreme Court decision, so they do not pay.
Okay,
You have 3 tiers. You have the no pay and the sewer. You have the standard, then you have the void surcharge. That's really. Okay.
we seem to always end up ones that have the point surcharge.
I do too.
Thanks, Brian.
Well said. Where's Jerry when you need him? All right, old business. Where's Bucher?
He's
online.
online.
I am on PTO and have a good signal for a while. Might get a little choppy in a bit, but I've got Kelsey and Ryan and Aiden all accessible to help fill in if necessary. Johnny, would you like me to just walk through the letter in that order? Doesn't exactly match.
Yeah, but it's the project update, and then I got the capacity and disposal, and of course, our deviations. But I don't have that stuff pulled up yet, so just the project update first, if you want.
Okay. Still just putting a bow on headworks building, membrane treatment building, treatment process basins. We gave RSCI partial substantial completion so that they could start their warranty process with the equipment manufacturers. We haven't given them facility substantial completion because there's still quite a bit of finish work to be done. But in general, looking good on the liquid side. Adam and Zach continue to kind of fine tune the process. It's still in its infancy relative to, these plants have 40-year lifespan. So this one's just learning to walk and will continue to perform better over time, especially as water and the weather warms up. So Chawler gave me his detailed bullet points there. If anybody's curious exactly what's going on, and then we also have RSCI's look aheads. We met with RSCI last week, week before last. They've given us several narratives and schedules, detailed schedules, positioning for just a request to recognize that they essentially deserve a bit of an extension due to the delays during the liquids process startup that were due primarily to MEMCOR's equipment issues. So they lost a little over a month there. We walked through that. We walked through remaining changes, pending change orders, as Terry said. Currently, no big surprises on RSCI's budget. The schedule that's in the letter update has not been updated for that final number of days. We'll work through that with Johnny and staff, and then update this schedule that you've seen many, many times to bump substantial and final completion out approximately probably 2 months, just to, as long as we're doing it, to cast out a little bit more than exactly what they're asking for, but we'll work through that in the next month. We talked about our remaining budget. So when we originally scoped this, it was 3 years ago, essentially. And we did the best we could, forecasting how much time this project would take. This would be extension number 3 for the contractor, taking total extensions to 14 to 15 months, depending on where we land. And we're just talking to Johnny in the district about how much we want to try to take. We could taper really hard and just pop in and out over the next 6 months, but that would be a completely different level of coverage versus what we have done to date. And then we talked about, the other set of guardrails would be complete carrying coverage through the end of the contract, end of our CI's contract. We could probably land somewhere in the middle of that, but we'll work through that in the next month and come to the board in July with a amendment request to finish that. And then we also always cover we call it the post-construction warranty period. That's basically just to help with operations and warranty claims. Say a pump goes out, we help make sure that the contractor still runs that through the contract to get parts and repairs done. Any questions about the project as it sits today? We are adding a couple of items. As Terry said, these aren't surprises. Pontoon clean out has been in the works for 2 or 3 months. Needing one more clean out of that. It did get utilized for its part of its purpose, which is diversion of raw wastewater to help with construction tie-ins and cross ties, cross connections having to be done down there. So it needs one more good clean out before RSCI's contract's over. So we're going to run that through them. We don't yet have Cinegro's full proposal, but I should have it any day now, and we'll update that next month. And then we also have the centrifuge procurement. So just to remind everybody, the dewatering upgrade was in the original design, but put in as a bid alternate just to help adjust on bid day to the district's actual budget. And at the time, we decided to only accept one of the bid alternates. Later, we went back and had RSCI rework through the additional 3 phase 2 concrete basins. This centrifuge, Ron And Youngworth put together a package asking for BizRad funding in 2022, 2023. They gave Ron a partial award, and he entered basically a purchase agreement with Andritz to buy the centrifuge at least, get it on site, and then figure out how to get it installed at some later date. So that's still out there. I haven't talked to him in a week and a half or so, so I'm not exactly sure where that's sitting, but I know the requirement to use it or lose it on that BizRad funding is coming up here very quickly.
So to add to that, we cut a PO for Andrews last September. There was some electrical that had to be updated. We have not heard anything from Andrews since then. So this project is actually very, very close to being cut and the money being given back to BizRad. Because we have not heard anything from Andrews. We've not gotten any updates on the electrical. We submitted our quote to BizRad and they've encumbered to 360, but at this point in time, I mean, it's the 18th. We don't hear anything from them in the next couple of weeks. This is a project that could come back at a later date because we've not secured this piece of equipment. We have no ship date on it. We have nothing from Andrews. And like I said, the PO was actually issued to them last September. Still in business. We hope so. They're a pretty big company.
Yeah, they are. And the centrifuge is just a piece of everything you would need to have an operational facility. The entire facility, we put it about 1.7 million when we put in for BizRad assistance, and they pushed back. There was negotiation between them and Ron, and so Ron kind of landed on, well, at best, or excuse me, at worst, we would get a free centrifuge for completion of the project at a later time. You need a polymer feed skid, you need conveyance, you need plumbing, electrical. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if the purchase got canceled. You just have to come back at some point and do the full facility to replace that belt filter press that you have right now that is 20 years old, and the operators are making it work. It's okay for the short term, but at some point you want to replace that. Change order updates are there. No changes since last month. We have a handful of small stuff that we walked through with RSCI. They didn't have final numbers, but it was a lot of $3,000 to $4,000 modifications and changes, and some of them on our side of the ledger, so credits. But we'll get through that one, and I believe Trent Dykstra House will be here in July to also kind of lead a more formal request for the extension, whether it be 39 days or if we decide to do 2 months or whatever, but we'll work through that with the construction team. And when I say construction team, I mean your staff as well. Reuse management plan. So we're polishing that salinity reduction plan to add to that. And then Ron wanted to conduct a review workshop in our office sometime in the next month, where we would all walk through it together, make sure it's what we want, and then give it to legal counsel for review and then DEQ. Reuse booster station PER. This project, we are working with John Olson at Spanish Peaks and the county on figuring out exactly where it should go and how to get it permitted through the county. working through that right now, and then the district's gonna RFQ final design for that. So that, hopefully you'll be breaking ground on that next year. There are some tips and tricks that are gonna have to be done to make that work with YC1 upgrades and some YC1 pump replacements that are gonna be needed more quickly than this project will allow. I don't know if Adam or Justin are there and want to give a little overview of what's been going on with the pumps at YC1, but just some debris from, well, cut to the chase. There's been some ducts that have been pulled in over the years that I think have cut loose with some of the piping and valving work that RCI is doing, and knock those pumps. Just keep it simple. Knock the pumps off kilter and not putting out exactly what they're capable of. So working through that, and probably going to have to figure on some replacement pumps here pretty shortly. Does that adequately capture that, Johnny?
Yeah, Adam's here.
Yeah, the short of it is we've had just 4 months of pumping disruptions at our pump stations. Mechanical seals, cooling fans, output shafts failing. In addition to sucking up 4 ducts out of the big pond. So we've had it's been a mess. We're looking at some alternatives from new readily available pumps and parts, because the closer pumps we have are extremely long lead times, exotic parts that have been kind of tough to stay on the vendor with. So we're working at some options as we speak.
Nice. One point I'd make on that, in your narrative or your summary, but the district had previously decided not to aggressively move this project forward, as there was some time with the additional pumping capacity to provide the 160. Right. Let's send a clear message from the board. We want to pursue at least the engineering and the ability to move forward so we can reach that 160 million capacity. Is that an accurate statement? I just want to make sure they have a definitive direction on this.
It's vital to our operation.
Yeah,
Something has to change with our pumping setups.
Okay, so the 160 had been, let's just say, an option in the past. Now it needs to be a reality in the future. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes. Everybody on board with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to accomplish that, we need some type of buffer for these type of mechanical failures. Yeah. So we need to.
Yeah, it gives us the pumping capacity. Right now, the current system is stressed to, it would have to pump 400 something, but with this, it changes the pump setup here, takes some pressure off. And it gives us the availability that if we got to pump a lot in a short amount of time, we can.
I think the 2 biggest things, and again, it's part of a larger package and plan, but the 2 biggest things is snowmaking coming on board, especially with Spanish Peaks having a phase 1 and phase 2, that'll be over 40 million. But the fact that now I think we've had a successful year, or Yellowstone put that a successful year, that puts that more at the top of the list. Not an emergency, but I think we need to take away the decided not to aggressively. We want to move forward with that and prioritize that as the plan comes online.
To reach the 160, but then the second part of it is like globally, where's all this water gonna go, and a bigger picture on the distribution of that.
Yeah.
Then it also gives us the flexibility to actually do more preventative maintenance on the lawns.
I think the direction was not wanting to put and move this thing forward like that's all we're ever gonna try to achieve is 160. Like what's the big picture? Like, dude, is your 200 million or is your 240 million, whatever that number is? That doesn't mean we stop this, or at least try to get to that point. Is that what you're saying, Brian?
Yeah. I think we need to bump it up in the priority list now that we're nearing the end of the plan. That's all. No, thank you. And it sounds like you need it more than you need it to be part of a bigger plan.
This project should have proceeded a couple years ago when we last discussed this, but here we are now.
Yeah.
So we need to move forward with it.
No, it's good time. Okay.
Do you want to hold the canyon discussion?
Yep. That's why you lip serve.
Water master plan is out for RFQ for proposals due on the 28th. BizRad awarded you I don't think this is all final, but close. $92,500 towards that plan. And we'll give you a good proposal and see who else throws in. Rate study, don't need to touch on that too much. I did want to chime in earlier. Excuse me. We do a rate survey across the region annually, and watch anybody who will give us data on their rate situation, both service rates and impact fees, or in your case, investment charges. And what we routinely see is that the highest utilities at any given moment are those that have just been through some large projects. Kind of makes sense, right? Because you're paying those projects off. And then as you get further and further away from that project, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, your rates will be more in the middle of the pack or the lower part of the pack. Big Sky's different, obviously, but we would expect to see something similar. And those folks that have the lowest rates are usually the ones that are headed towards a big project. It's just very cyclical. And the cost escalation in construction and water, wastewater, big public works, big mechanical, civil projects, I think was adequately covered, but it has been extremely disruptive in our world in the last 2-3 years. I don't know what else to say about that. It's just offering misery loves company. District engineering services. Johnny, you want me to dive into the plant ratings and SFE effort now?
Yeah, I got your letter pulled up.
The letter, and then the memo
Yep.
gives a little bit more detail, and I can walk us through the memo if you all would like. It's complicated and it takes a while, but I'm good with it if you all want that. Or if we want to just cover the highlights, we can stick to the board update letter.
So I've got your SFE accounting update and water resource recovery facility capacity pulled up. I think that really sums it all up.
Okay. So the top there, excuse me. We first started by, let's get all the flow-based agreements on the table and have them in one place and understand them. So that's Spanish Peaks, Lone Moose, Westland, which is town center, and then West Fork, which is really small potatoes compared to the others. Then we wanted to get the capacity letters together, because the capacity letters are kind of this interim permitting process, but do count as obligations, certainly with DEQ. So we worked through those with Ron, updated the spreadsheets. That's about 32,000 gallons per day. Very small potatoes again, but this is an accounting exercise that you all really need to have to go through just to run your business, but we also have to vet it all with DEQ and show them that we know everything that's been obligated or committed. Then we went through all the permitted SFEs. We have, Terry's active billing numbers. We also know that Boyne has SFEs on the table, or remaining in their allocated pool, I should say. So working through all those. Also in that bucket are the 600 SFEs that you all agreed to award to the Housing Trust for Affordable Housing as part of the whole interlocal agreement with the Canyon and BizRad. So those total to 6,940. So when we basically trying to get to apples and apples with flow-based agreements and SFEs, so that we can understand exactly where you sit. We only used, so of the let's say everything that's been permitted and allocated is 9,916. You currently have 6,580 SFEs actually sending wastewater to the plant. The plant itself has a capacity for those SFEs, which we get to. Those numbers have not changed since design. So we take, I'll just run you through the 2020 deviation request where we did the same thing. We landed on 107.3 gallons per day per SFE with DEQ. We didn't really like that number. They pushed us to a max 60 days. We had a really wet year with some significant I believe it was 2018. And that's what landed us there. When we take current plant flows and the current active SFEs, we can then take the last 3 years of flow data and recalculate that GPD per SFE, and it comes out much, much lower. So you see their average annual 74.6 gallons per day per SFE. If we did the same approach that DEQ forced us to take last time with that peak 60 day, it's 95.1 gallons per day per SFE. Max month, which is a rating that we all use in wastewater for various reasons, is about 103 gallons per day per SFE. And then peak day currently is 141. So we haven't finished the deviation request, but I think it would be easiest if we focused on that average annual number and just stressed to DEQ that number has all the peaking factors behind it and is only used really for the basis, that your engineers track your annual peaking factors. We can update this as time goes on, but let's not get into using a max month or a peak 60 day, because I think it just confuses people. And if we do that in phase 1, you still have 1,800 SFEs available for permitting. That gets into that previous conversation of, in the past, and I also do not know where that methodology came from. Ray Armstrong and you all did it for years of letting down 400 or 500 or 300 SFEs for permitting, just to kind of do it piecemeal rather than open up a bunch at once. I don't know that, there's any formal reason you have to do it that way. It's a fine way of doing it, but I'd say in essence here, we have a lot more SFEs than we accounted for in 2018, but we also have a lot lower GPD per SFE coming to the plant currently. So between those two, we're still in really good shape overall. You have plenty of capacity in the plant, and you have plenty of paper capacity to still allow smaller annexations without a vote necessarily, but overall you could move forward with small annexations because you have paper capacity, and then you have plenty of what I like to call liquid capacity. You're only at about half right now of what that plant's capable of taking. So my advice would be to use the 74.6 GPD per SFE with DEQ, but give them all the data on the peaks just so that they understand that we've accounted for all of that. And in the tabulation column over there, you see the plant capacity in SFEs. I would use the 12,198 and the 74.6 values with them. They'll get all of this data in our submittal regardless. And they'll want it because they'll want to look through it and come to agreement that this is all okay.
So high level overview, the board asked, what we have and where we're going and what's left. So we have with the new facility, 12,205 based off of the numbers that we're going to propose to DEQ. That's our next step, is to go and get a new letter of deviation. We are currently at 6,500, which is just over 50%. We are accounting for all of our obligation, which is the 9,916, which is oddly enough, 83% of our total capacity. So we have an excess capacity as it stands now of a roughly 1,800, depending on our standard deviation when we get that approved from DEQ. Without going into phase 2.
Got a big win. Yeah, I think everybody, David, you're probably hanging around for that word annexation. Not to interrupt, but do we have to wait to take it? I'm just going to use numbers set from the 107 down to 74, or do we have the ability to vote on annexation with the current 107?
I believe, Scott, you can tell me if I'm wrong. We have the ability to move forward as we go through and get the finalization from DEQ.
So Scott, great summary, although I feel like we're converting between metrics and feet and ounces and all. But the point being is today, with next month, 2 entities come in for annexation. We vote on it. I mean, isn't that what we're looking at doing right now? That we have both excess capacity. Scott, in your opinion, can you give us that in writing?
I believe you did in this table right here.
Yeah, as far as the engineering and the reality, I think we're all fine, and I would put my signature and stamp on that. It'd be nice to go ahead and get through the DEQ deviation approval. But I don't know that is legally binding, that you have to wait as long as you have staff and your engineer and your board all in agreement that clearly you have the capacity.
Is the audience at DEQ the same as it was during that last study?
No. The engineer behind the folks that we worked with, Denver Frazier, might not change, but that might be the only person of the 3 or 4 that we worked with at that time that won't have changed.
So basically, they held you to 107 because the peak 60 days. If they do that again, that puts us at what, 95?
Yeah.
So then it's only 400 in addition instead of the 1,800.
I believe you're correct.
Yeah.
Because the 74 versus 95 versus 107 would be the differential on all of that.
Yeah.
Feels a little risky without having some, guidance that maybe we stick to a smaller number, whatever that is, between the 107 and 95, and we stick with the 95 just initially, and then if we're successful with the 76, great, or 74, whatever that is, great. I think that gives us more runway.
I look at it, and again, these are all different lanes we're in, but that idea, I just want to be rock solid when we vote on annexation. That's the number one thing I'm sitting here saying. Do we have quote excess capacity, and do we have the ability at the 107 as it stands today, not what we have? We have that, great. And Scott, I'm going to ask you to copy this, and this is going to be the playbook for all of us.
Yeah.
This is our goal. This is where we're going. But I just want to make sure that we don't fail on expectations with these ratepayers that are coming in for annexation, that we get to the altar and we can't deliver. There's some curveball. That's all. That being you.
I would say, just to answer Mike's question, so if you go to the table, you could use the 95.1 for the peak 60-day if you wanted to just continue down DEQ's kind of philosophical approach there. But the difference is that we now have, a plant and engineers that can give you a peak 60-day plant rated capacity in that left-hand column of 1.16 MGD. I apologize that it's this complicated, but we didn't really have that with the 2004 project. We basically had a average annual and a max day. And, we went through the last 6 years with that plant. We always had the average annual, the maximum month, and the peak day, the 910,000 gallons per day annual average, max month 1.4 and peak day 1.8. This is like the towing rating or torque rating on a truck, right? So it can handle peaks, but you don't want to overload it on a day-to-day basis. The peak 60-day is a really rare metric, and Terry Campbell wanted to use it because he knew enough about Big Sky's tourist and visitation patterns and I&I patterns to know that it's not your typical municipality. You all are becoming more of a typical municipality, and we have the ability to put a stamp on what we think the peak 60-day capacity of the plant is based on what we rated it for max month and average annual. So if you all did want to use the 95.1 just to continue with what DEQ said in 2020, then I would still be comfortable saying, well, that's fine, but the plant's capacity for that peak 60 days now 1.16, and the translation in SFE capacity when you use peak 60-day and the average annual is the same at 12,205, which is, a lot of capacity.
That was a good exercise, Mike. I wasn't thinking of it that way, of giving a little bit of a pad. One other question I had was regarding annexation. You have annexation with owners that have obligation or quote paper obligation. Then you have owners that don't have paper obligation that would come to the table. Do we have a different criteria for those? Because it feels like, I'm just going to say Spanish Peaks for the heck of it, because they've been at the table and they've been patient. Are they treated the same as someone who doesn't have a paper obligation regarding excess capacity? Or is the excess capacity criteria for those who do not have paper obligation? Does that make sense to the board?
Yeah.
The excess capacity is outside of what we've already accounted for.
So that's kind of your insurance policy in addition to the pad, Mike, you're talking about, the 95.1. It's already rolled into that and you still have excess capacity. But if someone else comes to the table, you have to have that as a different consideration.
Everything that is on paper or in a flow-based agreement is accounted for in this 9,916 SFEs. So it leaves everything that is outside of that, which Firelight is a good example.
Firelight's a great example, but then again, the housing trust is a great example on the other side of it. You have the obligations that wrap into that. We can have the insurance policy, the 95. Just want to make sure we don't get so far down and in August say, oh, just couldn't do it. And you're in the gold line, you're in the red zone. So, all right, because again, Spanish Peaks have gone on since January. It's time to have a definitive answer. What's the board going to say next month or in August? Now, as far as an action item, I'm not saying what your decision is, it's can you vote? Yes, sir. Yeah. And completely different issue than the gallons SFE question.
Yeah.
You just have to make sure we keep these separate.
That basically, the pre-board is 1,800 in every situation.
Yep.
That we have at our
Yeah, if we bring in anything new that is not already accounted for, that would apply to that decision.
Yeah, good. Yeah. That's progress. Michael, you can grab a go cup and head on out now. Got the annexation down, check that box down. No, it's been frustrating for everyone involved in this for the past 4 meetings, 5 meetings, so. But it's a really good summary. Now we just have to hold it, and unless there's any updates or changes to that.
Next one would be, I mean, once we submit this to DEQ, going through their process, that would be the final. We would have the new deviation.
But we don't have to wait for that to decide on annexation.
And maybe I missed it. When do we anticipate submitting?
Tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah, it's all ready to go, right, Scott?
Drafted, we just wanted to have this meeting before we
Okay.
fired it.
What's the review process like for?
60 days, I believe, if I remember right. So
They give themselves 60 days.
Yeah.
Sometimes we push and do better with them. And then lately they've been under a lot of pressure from on high to be faster, and they have been. So 60 days at worst, 2-3 weeks maybe at best.
DEQ is in the headlines today.
New leadership, right?
Yeah, and they pushed the pause button this morning, at least the paper this morning, the new leadership. Yeah, so. Okay, hey, progress. Any of the comments from the board, at least we have a better idea where we can go in the future with this. Anything else, Scott? Nope, that's it. Hey, Scott, thanks a lot with that presentation on PTO. Good timing. I'm glad we didn't have to wait another month.
Sure. And I'll mute and be probably in and out for a while, but you've got Kelsey and Ryan there, and Aiden online. Aiden did the bulk of the work on the SFE accounting and investigation, and so you should be in good hands even if I can't don't have a clear signal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
Bye.
Mace still. Yep. Mace is online.
Yeah, you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just backing up Kelsey. I think she's gonna lead with her presentation, but then I can give the Canyon perspective there.
So this next part, it's no action today. They wanted to present the feasibility for the Canyon Sewer District project, but we will have to take action on it next month for BizRad for Mace. So this is the final presentation before we make a decision next month, okay?
Correct. And I believe we'll meet as a joint committee maybe one more time. But I think part of the goal of this presentation too is to make the joint committee recommendation to the board. Essentially, we've developed a high and a low end for the conveyance costs of wastewater from the Canyon area to the new Big Sky Wharf. Our preferred recommended alignment is installing the pipeline within private property. And we've chosen the newly acquired BSRAD lot as the location for the primary lift station. At this point, that's just, we have permission, that's the go ahead. We know we can locate the lift station there. Even though it includes an additional highway crossing, we're hoping that there could be some cost savings lining that project with the MBT roundabout project. Maybe we can get away with some open trench installation instead of jack and bores, and routing that pipeline through Calisted's property just saves a lot of challenges in working with Montana Department of Transportation, as well as the USFS and constructability issues. There's some really tight spots, basically where the highway is sandwiched between the river and, the toe of the mountain there, where it would be really difficult to get an excavator in there. And with speaking with private landowners, nobody's shut the door. And they're open to discussing with us, but it seems like they're open to having a below ground utility, not an above ground lift station. So it does look like the most feasible option is to locate that above ground lift station on the USFS property, and install the pipelines along the private property. But we still need a hard no from all those landowners that they would not allow that lift station on their property before the USFS would consider allowing us to put the second lift station on their property. But just in terms of constructability, MDT permitting, traffic control, single lane traffic, night construction, and then just the physical constraints of is construction even possible in some spots. We would recommend going with the private property routing options. Alternatively, this figure shows what the other options are that are less ideal. You could potentially locate the primary lift station on the chapel property, but we have not had permission for that yet. But again, the owner hasn't shut the door. And then just, this is what it looks like to route along Highway 64 within the Montana Department of Transportation right away. And then connecting to the inlet siphon structure instead of directly to the water resource recovery facility. Inlet has its own challenges with operations, where they can just control flow a lot more easily if they're connecting directly to the work rather than going to the inlet siphon beforehand. We're estimating costs between 18 and 25 million. This number is low, but we've sort of had our sanity check on 18 million with Keith Waring, formerly with TD&H. And the 18 million, we do need to vet with district staff if they're comfortable with that number, because it does include some scope cuts. And we want to verify that you would be okay with that before we present those numbers for planning purposes. It also includes some assumptions that we will be able to acquire private land easements. Doesn't include costs potentially associated with those land easements. So the lower number is a little bit optimistic, I would say, whereas the $25 million number would be our recommended number to use for budgetary purposes. And we would want to project, that's in 2024 dollars, so we would want to project that to 2027 costs when we think this project will commence construction, so that we're not the low bidder again. Ultimately, I don't want to speak for the joint committee, but my understanding what their recommendation to the board might be is if they find the project feasible, if BSRAD or something will cover the infrastructure costs. It's my main takeaway from the joint committee meeting we had.
Yeah, I think there were two components to that, at least from my perspective. One is understanding the cost, the new cost, right? I believe we have, was it 12 million?
Mm-hmm.
12 million is the amount that resort taxes, but the alternative, if this doesn't go through, is a standalone system in the canyon. And what's that cost compared to what we anticipate being a premium for this option? And knowing what that delta is to get our kind of our head down, is that something we can go to the community and say that premium is worth it because of the connectivity of the overall systems. And then the flexibility that it potentially offers our district with getting rid of water. And we do see it as an asset, but we also recognize that that will be cyclical, and having options provide some value to our district.
You have economy of scale too. You don't have two separate entities. And there a benefit there as well that goes along with all under one umbrella, one team, one staff, one place.
I would agree with that. But just being able to know what that difference is, because conceptually, it makes a lot of sense, but there's some gap where you start to go, well, wait a minute, maybe at that year, it doesn't
100%.
make sense. And so understanding
Just
that.
because of the distance into versus proximity.
Right, and I guess, in terms of what a go it alone solution looks like for the canyon area, there is an option for a phased package plant approach, that would be more cost effective for, the lower flows, for, this initial, flow rates generated by the canyon, but once they get to, the flows that we anticipate, and you look at this on a 20-year time scale, the conveyance becomes the most cost-effective option rather than the canyon work to construct and expand a facility, in the standalone solution. So in a 0 to 5 year time scale, it's difficult to say, but on a 20-year scale, this becomes the most cost-effective solution for both entities.
This is Mace. I think I'll chime in now. I think one big kicker will be what is the value of that disposal, that relief valve to Big Sky? Because this Highway 64 corridor is basically 50% of a $50 million project. And a good chunk of that is to create that co-solution of disposal. And if that's an asset to the Big Sky Water and Sewer District, this co-solution, I still see it as a great plan A. But if it's less of an asset now as snowmaking's coming online, I could see a go it alone solution being the right choice for the community. So that's kind of where my unknown is quantifying that disposal asset.
I think that's well said. Yeah, I don't think anyone has an answer.
Yeah. Reuse is the wild card of an asset. It just continues to grow. And it's finally real that it's an asset, not a liability, just as you said, with the rate paying.
I mean, it is unique for a customer to come to you with disposal enough for their own wastewater that they generate and send. There's the benefit that it's gravity down the mountain instead of pumping up the mountain. So you would prioritize Yellowstone Club and Spanish Peaks, but if they don't need the water, why spend the energy costs delivering it up there? So there, yeah, there's just considerations.
You unknowns out there. Yeah, it's a great report though. I mean, numbers are just so hard to track. Someday we're gonna look back at this sheet and say, really? What were you thinking? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think when I talked earlier about putting in the deviation capacity based on plant capacity and flows, we're gonna have to also walk through DEQ of what we're doing on reuse, in terms of where we sit currently, which is maybe 80 to 85% capacity. The reuse booster station mid-mountain upgrades will help considerably to show that we can use all 160 million gallons of that agreement. That'll be probably the first key. then showing them what else we have in the cards to increase reuse capacity, just like we just did with the plant, will probably be key for that deviation request. And so you all are back in a situation where you often have been of the long-term reuse situation looks great. The short term is the tougher decision making of what to go for first, what makes the most sense to really go all in on, whether it's mid-mountain, which I think you've all agreed to do, to use the full 160. Then is it the canyon? Is it firelight? Is it snowmaking on the other side of the mountain? Is it potable reuse? And so we'll have to show them all that, and just that, hey, there is a plan to increase reuse capacity as we need to, as the district grows. So just keep that in mind. Any low-hanging fruit you can grab it, would be my advice.
This needs to be right there. So much progress in the last few years on it. Just great to see those properties activated. Southern Comfort, my city. Okay. Anything else? Questions?
I'm going to throw one more item out there of just a little bit of urgency that as a joint committee, there will be kind of that BizRad feasibility as we present everything as it relates to the Highway 64 infrastructure, as it relates to the Canyon infrastructure, that joint committee soaking in the easement logistics, the cost, the discharge permitting, and going back to BizRad of, yes, it's feasible with caveats is what I'm anticipating, but we need to move that along in the coming month. And then the progress ultimately needs to hold conceptually a 2027 pace so we don't forfeit some free money that's lingering. I do expect some extensions there, but just want to emphasize that little bit of urgency of decision making coming in the coming month. So.
Own it. Great, thanks. Thank you, Mace.
A big star on it. Yes. Okay. Great summary again. Very, very productive presentations today. All right, John, next up.
Legal, so we did get back the YC tolling agreement that is currently in front of Rich Chandler, and I expect that to be on the agenda next month.
2 down, annexation tolling. Okay.
And new business, we got Gina here. She's got to leave at 10:05, so she's
I'm a fast talker.
Oh, we would have shuffled you, sorry.
It's okay. I just didn't know. This is a big deal. Like, yeah, lots, so many things.
So this has actually been a lot of work with staff and the committee and stuff. So we finally got everything packaged up and ready to present. So it's all yours.
Sure. So what we're going to do, and just so you guys know, when we talk about this, we talk about this year, next year, and then 2 years out. So we're trying to make sure we're not being short-sighted so that we don't make an abrupt change that's super disruptive. That's our goal. And to spend the money wisely, so we're not wasting money. The biggest change in the health insurance, so we did shop it, we took it to market, we shopped with all carriers. We made the decision to stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Currently, we are offering 2 plans. We're adding a 3rd plan, so plan 1 is actually the new plan. And they're listed in order of HSA and FSA eligibility. So the plan that we're adding is a lower cost HSA eligible plan. The premiums are lower, and the incentive here, or the fit, would be for a healthy family or individual. They are going to have access. The biggest line here is HSA eligibility. I'm not sure how much everybody knows about the current benefits and the HRA. So today, every employee gets $4,500 of health reimbursement money. And to continue to keep the $4,500, employees are going to have to shift to the HSA, the first plan, with a lower premium. It's got a higher max out of pocket, but you would get the whole $4,500 on a monthly basis, which comes out to $375 a month, contributed into their health savings account. The advantage of a health savings account, those are qualified pre-tax dollars. They roll over from year to year. So the incentive for a healthy family is that you can hold on to that money. The money's going to the employee rather than an insurance company. It rolls over every year and you can grow that. You can also make additional contributions. The $4,500 will not max out the HSA for a family. And then that makes the max out of $7,250 not as scary. And we're also adding a more affordable plan, looking to the future. There's not going to be any employee share this year for premium, but that may be a reality next year and moving forward. So we just want to make sure that we have a plan with a lower bottom line premium in place, because the super rich plans are great when the district's paying the whole bill, but when you pass along a cost to the employees, our goal is to always have a plan that is little or no cost to the employees for a family. That's the biggest reason why we added this first plan. The next two plans are the same plans that we've offered. There's the middle plan is a copay plan. So it's the only one that offers upfront coverage. The last plan is an HSA with a lower max out of pocket. This is a plan intended for somebody who knows they're going to hit their max out of pocket or is a higher utilizer, just to contain their costs. If you go on plan, the middle plan, which is a copay, you will still, it's the only plan where you can still access the health reimbursement. So you'll get, the employees will get $3,500 a year, not $4,500 a year. The third plan, employees will take the money in the HSA. So they're going to get that monthly amount, which again ends up being $3,500 into their HSA. Employees that are on an HSA plan will no longer have the option to do the HRA. There's really no reason for it. And the HSA gives them access to their money. They can roll it over, they can manage it, and it frees up Terry from doing all of the admin. And we are looking at, for the two plans that were offered, all in, we're looking at about just over a 7% increase. Who has questions? What word on so much?
They added dental.
Oh, sure. So if you go to, so also today, we're self-administering, Terry's self-administering dental and vision benefits, and the max amount is $1,000, Terry, right? So it's $1,000 per person. And most of the time that is used. So we talked about that being about a $30,000 number that gets used. We're moving to dental insurance that's going to be paid by the district. The premiums are, you paying 100% of the premiums is about half the cost of the $30,000 that you're paying out in benefits. And this dental insurance plan has a $2,000 per person annual max benefit. So the employees are doubling what they have access to in the way of benefits, and the district is cutting in half their costs. So this is also a way you didn't know on the old plan how many people would use that max benefit. It was harder to budget for with premiums, and dental premiums are they don't have huge increases. So this is going to make it easier to budget for what the cost of adding employees and what your liability is. So replacing the self-funded or self-administered plan with Mutual of Omaha dental insurance paid by the district, and then the vision insurance is going to be voluntary. So if employees want to have vision insurance, they can elect it, but they don't have to, and then the cost of that will be 100% on them.
Which is what?
I think it's about
$7.
Yeah.
Per employee.
It's very expensive.
That's the amount. And then there's rates for adding the family too. So it's like $12.46 or something for.
And we'll be going over, we'll do a full employee evaluation.
It's per month.
Gina, when are you presenting to staff?
When am I presenting staff?
I don't know, they make appointments with Riverview.
No, I'm gonna do an employer orientation here. It's the best. Yeah.
Staff meetings Thursday.
Maybe. Yeah. We'll do it sooner than later because I want to make sure that everybody, you guys, all these changes will take effect August 1st. So I would say late June or early July, so that if anybody wants to make changes or has questions, they have time to talk through that with me.
Meeting this month or next month.
Okay, great. Amy, will you send me the email when that
Yeah.
is? Okay. Any questions or just as, you know, it's important to all of us that we are looking forward. If anybody has any suggestions or input, we've made the decisions for this year, but again, we always need to be thinking out ahead. So I'm welcome any suggestions or input.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to at least make a comment because you walked us through this, a couple of weeks ago, we met. And, you know, personally, I don't mind sharing, my family's been on that first plan for 20 years. And that was the best decision we ever made, because it gives you the opportunity, rather than dollars going to the health insurance premium, they built up in healthy years in our accounts. And so when we had a bigger event, fortunately, the funds were there to spend those out of the HSA. So I think, you know, going in, it sounds potentially a little scary, like, oh, those are some big numbers. But recognizing that dollars now are going into an account and it's not like we currently have a use it or lose it situation.
Right.
You know, now you're spending your health insurance dollars the same way you'd spend your other money, which is, if I don't spend it, I keep it, right? You have the opportunity to build that up. So I would encourage anyone that's looking at that and kind of feeling anxious about it to recognize that there's some great opportunities to build up a savings account essentially for your health issues down the line.
And that you're getting an additional $1,000 into the HFA versus the other two plans. So all of a sudden that $7,200 max out isn't a $7,200 max out.
The HRA accumulated and rolled over too, though, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Every year,
Every,
so you could build it as high as.
and personally, we utilize all of our, we're on plan 3 and we use all of ours every year. My wife's diabetic and it's an extreme cost. I do need to talk to Gina about why a lot of the expenses that we're incurring aren't getting deducted. And I'll set up an appointment with her after this, but I've got some pretty big concerns about changes. Personally, I need to understand it more.
And individually. Anything else I can answer?
And then from what I understand, the 7%, they bring into account on how much the district's gonna put towards insurance. So essentially every year, we're losing 7% or so of our benefit, is that correct?
Well, you can present it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to control our costs here and every other place that I've been, that is definitely the trend, that insurance continues to go up and up and up. And we need to control our costs. We cannot keep expending 10% more every year. So yes, that's the case. We're gonna have to control our costs.
And giving you guys plenty of time, like knowing that's coming so that you can plan for it and consider other options or consider if spouses have access to insurance so that it's not a surprise. Like, I had no idea this was coming. We don't ever want anyone to feel like that.
Maybe 6 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, that's all we have for the insurance. I've never felt like insurance was the easiest piece to understand, but today I feel that way. I'm gonna skate out. You guys want to?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Permits.
All right. Record time, 10:03. Do it again.
Good day.
Kind of skip over legal, I mean, you address legal, but, just to talk a little about it. We still have answers, we need to get answers on the gallons, of course, I think we're chipping away, of course, annexations. That's a big one right there. Some of these other things we're talking about, we're getting focused. Got to get this gallons to SFE. And what are your thoughts on it?
Getting gallons to SFEs.
What's our next step? From a legal perspective, I know you and I have batted things around and ideas of how do we get checkpoints, how do we do this, a lot of them are just reasonable responses so that we don't disrupt the permit. What's the legal position we have regarding this?
Legal, I mean, we still got, liquid capacity and we got flow measurement devices on that. And we can continue to measure that. I don't see it holding anything up. But I do see that it being really hard to convert those flow-based agreements to SFEs with a moving target. So if we go, we're at 107 point now, in a sense, hey, got all your SFEs, and then we come in and say it is at 75, and a flow-based agreement says, well, but now I can have this many SFEs. It gets really cumbersome, in my opinion, to try to convert that. Whereas just staying with a flow-based agreement and monitoring the flow, knowing that their flow is monitored according to that agreement is a lot easier to track and to continue to maintain and doesn't stop the process, in my opinion.
It is a little contradictory. When Ron was sitting here and I just saw him pass through and get coffee, was always, yeah, we just want to convert to SFEs, want to do this. That's a little different now. Because now we're looking at saying you got a flow-based agreement. We're not going to disrupt issuing permits or capacity letters, just as importantly. We want to continue that. But then we receive a legal position. I'm not going to say an opinion because it wasn't as detailed as I expected it to be as we received from Scott. But it's this. All right, they come in with a new hotel. Spanish Peaks, they've been patient on annexation. What do we do with that new hotel? Because the position was, you're at 107. That would be inconsistent with what I think you and I have talked about. So how do we handle that?
I believe that you keep it at a flow-based agreement, and by the flow data that we've collected, we're showing that they're only at 56% of their flow-based agreement. And therefore, they still have flow that they can continue to build to.
How does that relate to like max or peak days?
So we're measuring their flow 24/7, 365. So we get their average flow, it's read every day. We have daily flow totals that can be totalized at the month and for the year. So I've run a lot of flow-based agreements, usually it's flows and loadings, but as I explained to Brian, you get into a wet year, and our job is to keep the system buttoned up and keep I&I to a minimum. But the flow through a plume is measured all the time, so we get to see those peaks and valleys, and we know, and then it goes through the daily average. We have something that, rain event or snow melt event, we see flow go like this, then we're going to be looking at the system to see where extra water is coming into. Locate it, we fix it, we repair it, we make notes of it.
Well, this system provides an incentive for the landowners or the developers to minimize I&Is because they're going to be held to that on their flow-based agreement. And, once that gets peaks and out of hand, I mean, it kind of sets the new bar once you get. But it's all great, but that's an update for the board that, we received communication from, Johnny did from Susan, saying you're at 107. Like, how does the board want to handle that? We hate to ever go against the legal opinion, but that's the feeling. How do we handle that next step? I thought maybe Susan would be on today, not a criticism, but we need to be able to debate this so that because, We don't want to disrupt those permits, and if we factor that 107 in, it's dangerously close.
So do we have a legal opinion? I'm not clear on that.
We don't have it in writing yet, but the stance is that DEQ is legal and the 107 would be utilized.
Okay, so that's the first step. It's gone on long enough. It's gone on long enough for the applicants as well. We need to, does everybody pretty much agree? We need something in writing that clearly identifies that position. And maybe to get that, Johnny, you have strong feelings on the flow-based side of this. It would be, this is my feeling, this is what I would like to recommend to the board. As the executive director, this is what I'd like to recommend. Please confirm in writing your position regarding this methodology.
And that's to Susan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the other piece of it is, are we gonna, fall back on the DEQ, and if that goes down to 74, is that the new number, or is it based on is it track DEQ?
No, we would have a new standard deviation, which would be that new number.
Yeah, just that fluctuates, but it's also, that may not also track with what these other flow-based agreements are delivering. They could be less than that potentially.
Yeah.
So we have to determine if it's tracking DEQ, if it's tracking information we're capturing from the equipment essentially.
We're still hanging out there with a response for Spanish piece. They put it in writing. This is what we'd like to do. John, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in this, but these are the SFEs, these are the gallons, these are what we'd like for SFEs for those gallons. I think that Susan's response was based on the fact saying, no, you're commingling SFEs and gallons. You have gallons and you're good. And that's based on 107. Well, you can't commit to SFEs based on gallons. But if we go that direction, then they could have to push pause based on the 107 and where they are. And so we're still in that gray area. We need to solidify our position very clearly. And you need to have your opinion into Susan. If that's what you're recommending to this board, you guys are the operations guys. This is our job to ratify this, not necessarily come up. That's your experience.
Well, I guess there's the 107 suggesting it is SFEs versus a flow.
Yeah, that kind of dovetails the two, which is inconsistent with what your approach is towards a flow-based agreement. And would minimize, it would contradict in a certain way the Spanish Peaks agreement, saying that the flow-based supersedes the SFE, correct?
Yes. That's where I'm kind of going with it. It feels like if we're going to be a flow-based agreement, the equipment suggests this is what it's flowing, and that fluctuates from time to time as you get towards the end, or you start to approach it, then there's a different discussion.
Exactly. We just need to confirm this, and I'm not speaking for Dick or Brock or anything. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and we put a written, just like we need a written response. I think that the board needs to approve a written response to Spanish Peaks, given the fact that they have it in writing, and they need it in writing. I mean, right now, you can push pause on a fire station, right? But you ever process it?
The will serve letter has been issued for their public use, but
we just
no permits or
can't
anything.
start a meeting saying, guys, we've never disrupted service or capacity letters. And then at the end of the meeting, it's like, yeah, we did.
No, we've processed 2 remodels for Spanish Peaks. And stuff, so.
We got to confirm that direction. Still, does everybody kind of feel that, or is it? We got to get it in writing.
I put the ownership back in, suggestions to the operating team as well versus, it just feels like that's the right approach.
Yeah. But I think we have to put Susan on notice as well that, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And unless we're in violation some way. Okay. But maybe an invite for Q&A to the next meeting. Formal, please attend the next meeting. So for Q&A.
Yeah, for sure. And then just kind of stepping back to Scott's data, that was the 43 million gallons or whatever. And the 1800 is irrelevant to this conversation because it's just tied to the flow. Each of these flow-based agreements are delivering versus what we have an additional capacity from our view, at the planned businesses today. 1,800 SFBs for annexations.
Again, I like the incentive that goes along with this. If flows spike out of these properties, so you're being held to.
Yeah.
So,
Well, would the land developer be responsible for tracking the INR of the district?
Well, if we own the sewer system, then it's on us.
So is the land developer gonna come at us and say, we need to fix this because they're over their flow agreement? Or is there anything binding that's gonna push the onus on the developer to look for those items?
I don't think that's an issue because we're gonna be maintaining the system and looking for I&I. But now you got a specific flow measurement device on that specific system, so you can see what normal is, and if you see a spike, then we're gonna go look for it. So
I'd go back and say again, we're all incentivized, but the developer is probably even a little more incentivized if you start having these flows spike and no one can find them. They'll want to find them just as much as the district. I think it's a partnership. So just, we got to put it to bed. You know, this is going on too long. And I hate coming and saying, yeah, it's subcommittee, yeah, we didn't meet. Let's figure this out. And hopefully Dick will be at the next meeting as well, because he's been a part of this and he has an opinion, and get everybody at the table and we confirm this once and for all. Okay. What else?
Permits, you want me to go
Yeah.
through? You guys have them all in the packet there. Trying to think of, we've had quite an uptick in permits, I would say. There's a few remodels, I think 3 new homes, a duplex. Obviously, the 2 that you've approved. Any questions about any of those that were in the packet? There was 1 new home in Spanish Peaks,
yeah, that's right.
2 remodels.
This one in Spanish Peaks on 3 lots. This is just one project spanning 3 lots.
What is it?
So lots 11 through 13, block 3. Oh no, that says town center.
Yeah, is that River Bluff? That's Riverview.
That's, no, this has got to be, well, it's Annex, I would guess. No, it's
So
for
they're doing,
SFPs.
I think they're doing a boundary line adjustment for that as well. So
I see.
we'll just be on 1 lot once.
Gotcha.
Always ask anomalies. Any anomalies out there that?
They're all anomalies for me since I'm new. When I get repeats, I'm really excited. Yes, that's the Wilson.
Yeah.
They are doing a boundary line adjustment though.
Gotcha.
There's Riverview.
Southport remodel.
Yeah, that's a remodel.
The Golden Eagle is repurposing their pool house.
Now, there's an anomaly.
That's actually a drop in SFPs, right?
No, they're out plumbing. There's no plumbing in there.
Okay.
They're gonna do some exterior.
Yeah.
Pool itself should too on for a while, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we refer to it as the pool.
Yeah. That's a giveaway. That's a giveaway how long you've been here. Yeah, all right. Anything else? Board? 10:15. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Second, just some second, sometime. We're adjourning.
All right. She made me get nerds on that one.